Right. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I hit the go live button a little bit late. We're holding a bit to see if anybody comes in still. It's been kind of rainy and stuff, so we're going to give it a minute before we start. But glad you're with us. And there's about 4 people here, plus me, who braved the rain to come out and meet in person. Anyway, if you have a very, the Soka Gakkai Buddhists, they just kind of meet in people's houses and they sort of have, the thing that they do. And I don't know that there's anybody who's really in charge other than whoever's hosting the meeting. But they have a very set, this is the guy we follow, these are the things we do, this is the practice, that's that, there's no discussion. But if you've got a group of people who say, well, let's get together and do something, then you have a whole argument about, well, what's that something going to be, So it's a nice idea, but anyway, it's the problem with spiritual communities is that they're made up of human beings, and human beings are imperfect and always will be. And even when you have the guy who is the head, and everything has to go through him, you're still going to have disagreements.
Yeah, well, this one person decided to take the shit because he had been in a cult. And he says, this sounds too much like a cult, and I want to.
And that's.
And so
Yeah.
it became personalities instead of principles, basically. So
Yeah.
his personality came out to the forefront and became an issue.
So you know what we're doing. We're having a conversation.
Yes.
There's another spiritual community that's not as good as this one.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding about that.
Thank you.
That is having some difficulties. And so we're talking about that. And it kind of connects a little bit to the Dharma talk tonight. And it's kind of it's a thing that happens in spiritual communities, that there's always conflict. And it's how you resolve that conflict that decides whether it's going to be, creative community or not. So, and you say that one of the individuals had been involved in a cult, and this looked, because there were rules and things that you had to follow, was difficulties for him. And I encounter that a lot with people who come here even, and not necessarily from cults, but who've been abused in other religious settings, and end up distrustful of religion in general and of rites and rituals and all of those things, which is really unfortunate because those things are really useful to human beings, and I think the reason we have so many of them is that we naturally look for those things. It gives us a framework on which to kind of hang our values, so we can look at it and go, yeah, this is important. It gives us an opportunity to do those things together. But if your experience with those things in the past has been, we're going to beat you over the head with it. If you don't follow the rules, you're not one of us and you're damned for all eternity or whatever, right? Then sure, that seems scary to you. Yeah. So if I can be of help, I'm sure they'd rather not have me around, but if I can be of help, I'm happy to come and have a talk. And about all the mistakes that I've made in the past. And now, anyway. All right, let's do some Buddhism, shall we? You want the mouse?
Sure.
You know how to do this, the ding, ding thing?
For versification.
For the versification and the Gata of Atonement.
So just to start.
Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Ding. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Gata of Atonement. Ding, ding, ching, ding. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. Ding. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. Please stand. Bows. The fragrance of this incense invites the awakened mind. The fragrance of this incense fills our room, protects and guards our minds from wrong thinking. The fragrance of this incense unites us with virtue, mindfulness, and wisdom. We offer it on behalf of all beings. Homage to the Buddha. Ding, just one ding. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I go to the Buddha for refuge. Being one with the Buddha, I resolve to each day follow the way of life he laid down for us to walk, awaken to his supreme wisdom. I go to the Dharma for refuge. Being one with the Dharma, the gates of Dharma are manifold. I vow to enter them all. The goal of wisdom is ever beyond. I shall attain it. I go to the Sangha for refuge. Being one with the Sangha, in the spirit of universal fellowship, and as a member of the Sangha, I pledge to strive for the enlightenment of all beings. The Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies, downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into the world of suffering. May I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. May all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those troubled in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt me in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who I have hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. Do you want to ring the bell for meditation too, or you want me to do it?
I can do it.
Okay. Can you hear the wood block when it hits to end the timer?
I don't know.
Okay. If you don't pick up the when that little bell goes, I'll go. Hey.
That's fine. I know it's pretty low.
Anytime there's a change, we got to figure this out all over again, and that's an issue. I was
Constant.
yeah. So 20 minutes silent meditation. I'm doing this on Insight Timer. If you're using Insight Timer, you can start with me, and then if you want to mute your computer, you can. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here now and reciting the sutras, hearing the Dharma, and training the mind. Great merit is attained. We dedicate this merit to the great Master Shakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting three treasures, to all ancestors of this Sangha and all beings in the Dharma world. May the Dharma body maintain strength and health, and years of life be lengthened for all teachers of this Sangha. Let their vows be fully realized, and may they live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma. We pray for the health and well-being of those suffering from diseases of body, mind, or spirit, and those ministering to the sick and the grieving. We pray for those suffering from violence, for the oppressed, the imprisoned, and all refugees. May they be serene through all their troubles, and may we realize the enlightened way together. Sabe sata sadahantu avera sukha jivino katam punya phalang mayham sabe bhagi bhavantu te. May all beings always live happily, free from animosity. May all share in the blessings springing from the good we have done. So last week, I talked about right view, and a question came up afterward. I think it was somebody posted in the chat on YouTube. I don't remember for sure, about the idea of letting go. How do I let go of things that are causing me problems? And I started thinking about this idea of letting go a little bit more. And it's something that I've talked about at different times in the past, but it's an interesting part of the practice. And the Buddha never really he never really talked about letting go. He talked about abandoning, dropping things. So, thoughts that lead to unhappiness, you abandon those, is usually the translation used. I think letting them go is probably a good alternative. So anyway, there's a koan that kind of always comes to mind when I think about this idea of letting go. It's case 29 from the Gateless Gate, the sixth patriarch of Zen, Huineng, lived around 700 AD. And when there was a Dharma talk at his monastery, and this was probably a common practice at monasteries all over, they would put up a flag outside the meditation hall to let the monks know that there was going to be a Dharma talk. Well, these two monks were arguing about the flag. And one said the flag is moving, and the other said, no, the wind is moving. And they were having this argument, very heated argument, about whether the flag was moving or the wind was moving, which is ridiculous because, one's got to be moving for the other to move, and the other's got to move before the one's, anyway, it's very complicated. But anyway, they were arguing about this. Well, the sixth patriarch was walking by and hears this, and he goes, not wind, not flag, the mind moves. Well, of course, this stopped them in their tracks, and so this became kind of a famous thing. And so other monks heard about this, and word spread about it. But then sometime later, there were a number of monks at this other temple where the head teacher was a nun. And they were sitting around talking about this story. And the nun, hearing this, also rejected Eno, the six patriarchs' remark. She said, it's not the wind that moves. It's not the flag that moves. It's not the mind that moves. And her comment became the final word on this. So this is koan, should not make sense immediately, but think about it. The monks who were having this argument had gotten hooked on their own preferences, their own views, their dogmas, their need to be seen as right, stuff like that. They were hooked on their way of seeing the world and their beliefs about what should be and what other people should think and that kind of thing. And the sixth patriarch's comment was to help them see how their minds were being pushed around by this clinging. and by the sort of the wind of their own mental activity. And he was correct that their minds were determining their experience, not the wind or the flag. The nun's remark suggested that really they could let go of those ideas altogether in order to find that place where nothing moves, where there's stillness, which often involves letting go of our preferences, our views, and especially our shoulds and our musts, and our ideas about these things. So in terms of the path of practice, this kind of works on different layers. The monk's argument was not completely invalid. Wei Ning's comment was not invalid. The nun's comment was not invalid. This idea of letting go happens kind of on different levels. And so when you look at spiritual liberation and the idea of what does it mean, I think this was another question that came up maybe last week or maybe at White Sands recently. What does it mean to be enlightened? Well, it depends, right? So if you're looking at the original teachings of the Buddha, enlightenment was to become an arahant, which means you'd let go of everything. You'd let go of all attachments to anything. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. And so that's why there's other kinds of Buddhism. That's why Mahayana Buddhism happened and Pure Land, all of that kind of thing. Because everyone can't go check into a monastery and just start routinely letting go of anything and everything so that you're completely not attached to anything and no more fetters to this existence. So you can let go of the things that create problems for you here and now, in this life. And you can think about that in terms of letting go of mental activity that leads to stress. That's a big part of the practice. And then the other part of the practice is to cultivate mental activity and mental states that lead to happiness and spiritual freedom and peace. So if you're meditating and anger comes up or anxiety, you can let that go. And you can try to keep it from returning, not by repressing it or forbidding yourself to experience it or go, I'm a Buddhist, so I don't get angry anymore, or anything like that. But really by kind of seeing, all right, what happens? What are the patterns resident in my mind that I can kind of untangle so that anger doesn't control me so much anymore, so anxiety doesn't control me so much anymore. And then cultivating mental states that are helpful. The best way, one of the first verses in the Dhammapada said, hatred is never defeated by hatred. It's only defeated by non-hatred. So what do we do every service? We recite the Metta Sutta, and then we chant, may I be happy and well, may all beings be happy and well, right? So that the reason we do that is to develop skillful mental states, goodwill for everyone. If we're practicing goodwill enough, then we're not going to be yanked around by anger. So some of you probably heard this story from me before. I was at my desk one day. This was probably 10 years ago. And I got a phone call from a guy who lived somewhere in this area. And he said he'd gotten interested in Buddhist practice and he wanted some guidance in what to do. And I said, okay, I'd be happy to help you. What can I do? And I told him about our meetings and said, you should come to the meetings, things like that. And he didn't want to do that. He said, well, I need to turn my backyard into a meditation garden so that I have a place to meditate. And he wanted me to come over and help him design a meditation garden. And he was very surprised when I said I didn't go around helping people designing gardens, But I said, he thought his first step in Buddhist practice would be to have a really nice place to meditate in his backyard. And I said, but the important garden in your practice is not in your backyard, it's in your mind. If you're a gardener, you plant the things that you want to have ripen and you nurture them so that they'll grow and be healthy. But first, you have to clear the ground of weeds and stuff like that. and then you have to keep the soil free of those seeds so that they don't sprout. And when you do see them sprout, you take them up by the roots so they don't get established again. And it's the same with the mind. You clear away the hindrances to make room for spiritual growth. So we were talking before the meeting started about spiritual communities, and these are good places to practice letting go of these things. So it's interesting. The service was a little bit of a train wreck because we've chanted things the same way for years and years, and then during COVID, I said, there's a couple of words here that have been bugging me for a long time. I'm going to change them now. And then I left this over here, and Brandon was holding the bell, and so we were trying to remember what it is that we can both remember what we used to chant. Neither of us could remember what we're supposed to be chanting now. So, and then when do you ring the bells and stuff like that? Now, there's a right way to do that. There's a bunch of right ways to do that. If you went to any Soto Zen temple, they would say there's a right way to ring these bells. And if you went to every Soto Zen temple in America, you'd find everybody ring the bells probably a little bit differently, So the rite and the ritual is something that we do together, and we want to do it correctly because it's a training in doing things a certain way. But that doesn't mean if we do it wrong, we're going to get struck by lightning, right? It doesn't mean that if we do it wrong, we did it wrong. Does that make sense, right? Now, we didn't have that conversation. I just sort of inflicted them on people and said, this is the way we're going to ring the bell. And mostly I got it from the way the bell is rung other places where I practiced, right? But so it's kind of interesting, you try to do it a certain way, recite a certain way, chant a certain way, ring the bells a certain way, because it's your practice to do so. But even the practice itself, we have to let go of at the right time. You should never be thinking, oh, I didn't ring the bell right. Oh my God, how bad I am. I'm a lousy monk, or anything like that. It's important, but it's not important. It's the same way with things like how we view, the Buddha gave a lot of teachings. Some of them were really important. Some of them were fundamentally important. Some of them, if you don't follow those teachings, it's probably hard to call yourself a Buddhist. But there's an awful lot of things that the Buddha taught, and then they've been translated and retranslated, and they fit differently in different cultures, and so they take different shapes. And so you kind of have to decide within the context of your spiritual community, what makes sense here? And some of these things you can have some fluidity about, over time. Somebody asked me at the prison this week, what did the Buddha say about marriage? I think I know what they were getting at. I think they wanted me to make some pronouncement on same-sex marriage or something along those lines. And I said, the Buddha didn't say anything about marriage. He did say how to be happy together. There are cases where couples would come to him and say, we're going to get married. We want to live happily ever after. Even after this life is over, we want to keep coming back together. And he told them how to do that. Live a virtuous life. Become enlightened. Become awakened together. And if you become awakened together, you'll stay together long into eternity. But he never moralized about that kind of stuff. I mean, there's stories where there were people who behaved really badly, and he would point out that their behavior was not good. But when we practice together, whether it's ringing a bell, whether it's deciding, how we're going to interpret, uh, a certain reading from the sutras, whether we decide it's how we're going to interpret what the bodhisattva vows mean to us, whether we decide, how we're going to handle the precepts and things like that. These things, we cling to them without clinging to them. They're important guidelines for practice, but at some point, you know, we have to take responsibility for our own wisdom. And this practice is really about developing your own deep wisdom. It's not about learning to say things a certain way or bow a certain way or follow a certain set of rules and say, these are the rules we have to follow. So anyway, I was going to talk about letting go, and I got completely sidetracked. How do you let go? You let go. You practice it. Years ago, I'd quit drinking, and my mom had tickets to the opera and wanted me to go with her. And it was Orlando Opera, and they were doing Faust. So for those of you who don't know, Faust is the story about the guy who, sells his soul to the devil in order to get what he wants and stuff. And then he realizes he made a big mistake. So during the second, it's 3 acts, during the second intermission, they were giving away champagne. I had quit drinking like 3 days earlier. And so I'm in the lobby and they're giving away champagne. And almost without thinking, I'm headed toward the champagne, and then I go, oh, wait a minute, I don't do that anymore. And then I started feeling sorry for myself because I should be able to have a glass of champagne. And so I go back into the theater, and the third act starts, which is a really beautiful, if you're not into opera, I get it, but there's a lot of people who aren't. But if you are, that is just such a profoundly moving thing that happens in that third act when he sort of comes to terms with what he's done and reconnects with the divine. And there's this, they had directed it in a way where these angels start singing. It's a chorus of angels, and I was in the balcony, and they had angels like in the back of the balcony and all around the side and everything. So the angels start singing, and you're just surrounded by these heavenly voices, and it was just incredible. And while that's going on, I'm getting urges for a beer, and I'm letting it go. And I'm getting an urge for cognac, and I'm letting it go. And I'm getting an urge for Jack Daniels, and I'm letting it go. And all of these cravings are coming up one by one, and I'm going, I don't do that anymore, and I let it go. And then I let go of the idea that I should be able to drink like everybody else. No, if I drink, I get in trouble. I let go of that. Let go of all of those things. The cravings themselves, and my ideas about the cravings, and my ideas about my ideas about the cravings. So all these layers of this onion had to be renounced, had to be allowed to pass. And so that's how we do this, is we look at those things that we know are leading us to trouble, and we let go of the patterns that get us there. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to share with you tonight. Any questions or comments?
I was going to say, while you were giving that story, years ago, probably when we were in this building, someone brought up, and it could have been me. I remember we were talking about opening the hand of thought, kind of. And so when I think of letting go, I think of the physical act of letting go. And you think of when you're holding on to something, it tends to be very tight. You're gripping it with force. That physical act is a relief, is something that is very well seen and well experienced.
Yeah.
Mentally, I know it's a little bit different, but there has to be that mental letting go that is in essence like an act, purposeful, kind of like your story, where it takes a little bit of repetition, it takes some practice, but there can be some letting go. And I'm trying to think of, I think that book was called Opening the Hand of Thought.
Opening the Hand of Thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, we both read it around the same time, I
I
think.
think so.
Like completely independently of one
Just
another.
randomly.
Just
But
started reading it.
that whole image of just like opening the hands is really powerful.
Could y'all hear Brandon? It takes 5 minutes for them to hear me and then answer and for me to see it. But I was just curious. It's one of the things we'll have to kind of play around with
Yeah.
when we get the other computer, just figuring out how to do that.
I've had anger issues like 20 years ago, really bad, due to my insecurity. But that's when I started going on retreats a lot, Zen retreats. And I found that just seeing my anger come, so I was on a retreat, just came back from a retreat, and somebody cut me off and sort of stole my parking spot. And anger was coming, but I was so chill because of the retreat I was just on that I decided I get to decide what to do about it. And something I noticed because of the subtle nature of it was that I liked that I was getting excited that I was going to be able to be angry. So just the act of noticing that pretty much eliminated that from my life altogether, because I was like, I don't want to like this.
Yeah. But a lot of people really do. I don't know if they could hear you, but I don't know how many rows back you get. But anyway. But that's, anger is especially, I think, nobody likes to be anxious. Nobody likes to be depressed. People kind of like their anger. A lot of them do.
Yeah.
And especially, and everybody always feels justified in their anger. Nobody ever goes, well, I'm angry at this guy, but I really shouldn't be. I mean, they always have a lot of reasons why they should be angry at that person. And so, yeah, I mean, when you think about it, though, it's like, is that really what I want to be? If you look at that carefully, well, no, of course not. Yeah.
I can relate, well, not necessarily with anger, but that, let's use the case of anger. I feel anger rising within me, but the learning practice of mindfulness, I've learned that there is a moment between the anger that's beginning and whether I react to it or if I respond to it.
Yeah.
And I have that moment where I can actually step away and say, this is how I am going to behave towards this. And then what I feel is I feel like a lot of gratitude that that I've learned to be able to do that.
Good.
And I behave in a much better way now than I used to.
That's it.
I think that's one of the things people who study meditation say, that it seems to increase I don't know if it increases the gap, but it increases the awareness of the gap between the stimulus and the response. Feeling has arisen. You become aware of the feeling instead of just automatically reacting
So
to it.
now, instead of reacting, I respond.
Yeah. And you can be selective about it. Once you've got that, you go, let me pick what I'm going to do here.
Choose how I'm going to behave.
Right.
But like you said about processing things, that this is the practice, right?
Yeah.
That was very profound to me. It was like, oh, I saw it for the first time, pretty much last time. I get angry, but I don't have to do anything about it.
Yeah.
It's just like I'm sad, whatever. It's just the same thing.
And that's the beauty of the whole idea of letting go, is that you don't have to prevent things from arising, which is you can't prevent thoughts from coming up. You can't prevent feelings from coming up. Some of that stuff bypasses, executive functioning in your brain altogether anyway. But you recognize it then and you go, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? Yeah. And you can let it go.
Isn't that also part of attachment? That process is that when we feel the anger coming up in ourselves, inside of ourselves, we naturally attach to it, and then we just react.
Right.
We
Yeah.
become attached. If we are not attached to it and we respond instead, then we're capable of responding instead. If we're not attached to it.
And usually we're attached. Anger, anxiety,
Yeah.
whatever arises, that's mine.
This is
Yeah,
me.
mine.
Yeah, that's
I am
mine.
this.
Yeah. But then you go, that's not me. That's this thing that happens. I can let go of that. Yeah. All right. Well, it is after 8:00, so we should do some great vows. Ding, chick, ding. Yeah. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Friends, I respectfully remind you, life and death are of supreme importance. Time swiftly passes by and opportunity is lost. Each of us must strive to awaken. Awaken, take heed, do not squander this life. Let's do some vows. Three vows to the altar. To the teacher. To each other. Thank you. See you next week.
I think where that drives quite a bit of it. What we're talking about is the Florida Community of Mindfulness, which is in